Sophia Juarez. In Kennewick, Washington, on February 4, 2003, Sophia Juarez was born into the family of Maria Juarez and Andre Abraham. Andre, Sophia's biological father, was absent when she was born and supposedly opposed to becoming her father in the first place, at least in the early years of her infancy while he was still a resident of Mexico. Maria Juarez, a 15-year-old who had recently become a teenage mother, did not back down in the face of her former partner's regrettable accusations and invited Sophia to move in with her at her childhood home. From the beginning, Sophia was exposed to a large family residing in the eastern Kennewick suburbs on the 100 block of East 15th Avenue under one roof. Ignacio Juarez, Sophia's grandmother, her boyfriend Jose Torres, and 6 of Sophia's aunts and uncles all resided in the same home. Sophia's mother, Maria, had biological siblings who were the aunts and uncles. Due to Maria's early age, her siblings' ages also varied, spanning from toddlers to teenagers. Despite being the youngest, Sophia wasn't the only helpless child playing around the house. After coming to the United States in the latter half of the 20th century, Maria and her family Juarez migrated from Mexico to Kennewick, Washington, where they established a new life with hopes of prospering and securing employment. With the prosperity of the nearby nuclear reactors known as the Hanford site, Kennewick was a promising city. The Hanford site was the location of World War II nuclear weapons research and development, as well as the facility that processed plutonium for use in the 1945 Fat Man atomic bomb dropped on Nagasaki, Japan. People moved here from all over the nation in search of a more tranquil American dream-style lifestyle, and the Hanford site contributed to a steady rise in blue-collar jobs. Because of its low height, the town in southeast Washington also has a moderate temperature, making it ideal for people who enjoy milder winters with low humidity. It is located on the Columbia River's southern bank. The Juarez family saw this as the ideal chance to make the move from their familiar surroundings in Mexico to the largely unknown land of America. The optimism and enthusiasm that propelled the Juarez family ahead were only strengthened by Sophia. Despite her shyness in public, she developed into a loving child quite soon, accepting every member of her family. The description of her was that she was a bright, active little girl who could always make her mother, aunts, and uncles laugh until their faces hurt. Sophia loved her Barbie dolls and liked to play pretend with her younger relatives while donning homemade costumes and makeup as a way to kill time when she wasn't the center of attention. In addition, Sophia was an avid cartoon watcher, and a lot of people think that her love of animated TV contributed to her limitless inventiveness and vibrant vitality. In addition, Sophia was well known for her love of hamburgers and for informing everyone that she knew they were her favorite cuisine thanks to the Burger King fast food business. These are the only details we have about the little child since, on the day before she turned 5, her happy, animated voice in the crowded family house on the 100 block of East 15th Avenue suddenly stopped. Now let's examine the sequence of events that culminated in Sophia's disappearance. Tuesday, February 4, 2003, around 8 o'clock at night. Sophia Juarez plays with her younger uncles in one of their bedrooms in East Kennewick. Concurrently, Jose, the boyfriend of Sophia's grandma, gets ready to run errands to the nearby convenience shop, which is just a few blocks away from the Juarez residence. Even though Jose doesn't reside at the house on 15th Avenue, he gets along well with Sophia and the other kids who do. Jose asks the children if they would like to accompany him on his brief excursion to the shop a little after 8 o'clock in the evening. The children all say no to the offer, with Sophia excluded, that is. She initially says she doesn't want to go, but at the last minute, she thinks she would want to go somewhere between 8 and 8:15 p.m. But in that same period of time, Sophia forgets to tell Jose of her newfound conviction, and he leaves the house by himself, leaving Sophia behind. Sophia runs through the home between 8:15 and 9:15 p.m. in an attempt to locate her mother, Maria. When Sophia finds her, she pleads for $1 so that she and Jose can go shopping. After some hesitation, Maria agrees and gives Sophia the money. Maria watches as initially scheduled and returns to her evening activities as originally scheduled. This would be Sophia Juarez's final verified sighting. Although it wouldn't be made public until June 2021, a very reliable witness reports seeing a young girl who fits Sophia's description strolling along South Washington Street, the street that runs alongside 15th Avenue and the Juarez family home, between 8:15 and 9:15 p.m. The subject of this eyewitness story also saw a second child approaching the girl. This time, it's a little Hispanic lad, maybe 11 or 14 years old, and he stands approximately 5 feet tall. In addition, the witness notes that the youngster had unusually huge hands, a baby face that made him appear younger than normal, and black, wavy hair. The witness then witnesses this guy taking the girl's hand and leading her toward a nearby parked van while he chuckles and she sobs. The witness characterized the van as the kind of van you might see builders or painters using. The color is a shade of light blue, silver, or gray that is reminiscent of a full-sized panel van from the 1970s or 1980s with outside windows. It's unclear if Sophia Juarez is being seen in this instance. The witness claims to be the girl who was seen with the suspect and van, though, when the police show her pictures of a younger Sophia. Meanwhile, at the market, Sophia's grandmother Jose's boyfriend buys a gallon of milk and uses one of the pay phones in the store to make a brief call to Mexico. 30 minutes later, at 9:45 p.m., Jose comes home alone from the supermarket. When Maria asks him about Sophia, he responds that she never made it clear that she would be accompanying him and that he never saw Sophia while running his errands. Maria Juarez doesn't waste any time in reporting her daughter missing to the police at 9:53 p.m. 3 minutes later, law enforcement shows up and starts asking questions about what has been going on for the past 2 hours. Maria updates them on Sophia's whereabouts before to her disappearance. Authorities can tell with certainty that Sophia hasn't just walked off or is playing hide-and-seek when they consider this information in addition to the low temperatures outside, Sophia's age, and the fact she wasn't wearing a coat. Instead, it's more likely that she was abducted. Following a short while of questioning, police assign other officers to search the Juarez family home, the yard around it, the cars in front of it, and the surrounding area. At least 7 patrol officers were dispatched to public parks, open spaces, school districts, and playgrounds in the vicinity. The Federal Bureau of Investigations and the local media are contacted within an hour of the Kennewick Police Department, also known as the KPD, being reported missing. Simultaneously, the state of Washington issues its first ever Amber Alert, advising the public to exercise due diligence in searching for a girl who fits Sophia's description. When the crescent moon peaks in the night sky, almost everyone in Kennewick, as well as federal and municipal government organizations spanning international borders to include the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, are aware of Sophia Juarez. Particularly private residents are keen to assist in the hunt, and many of them leave their houses early in the evening to scour the neighborhood for any indication of Sophia. The KPD is in charge of these search parties, and they use night vision and thermal imaging technology to negotiate the challenging terrain while setting up quadrant searches. Within a few hours, the case manager is appointed to monitor developments and support the search, including alerting the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. States that are nearby, such as Oregon, Idaho, California, and Nevada, also receive similar alerts. Even though no results are obtained overnight, an incident management team is assembled on Wednesday, February 5th, in the morning to carry out further search operations. In the course of the next 3 days, more than 500 volunteers from the general public, police officers, FBI agents, IMD staff, and members of the dive and rescue squad are involved in the search. They use cadaver docks, helicopters, airplanes, and even go through sewers and canals to find the missing individual. Police examine the homes of 2 parties in Kennewick and one in the nearby town of Burbank, Washington, on Saturday, February 8th. The mother of the boys who were searched and questioned in Burbank asserts that the police were trying to coerce her sons into making a false confession, but nothing is found. Tuesday, February 11th, 3 days later, the Kennewick Police Department received a report about a sexually explicit phone call between a man from Kennewick and an unknown person. Following the unsettling phone contact, the Kennewick guy allegedly made a strange remark regarding Sophia's disappearance, and came to be considered a person of suspicion. Following an extensive interrogation, the individual is accused of telephone harassment but is later absolved of any participation. The Juarez family home hosts a public candlelight vigil later that evening. There are 300 participants. A few weeks later, on Saturday, March 1st, a NASCAR driver named Damon Lusk decides not to use sponsorship opportunities on his racing car and instead puts a picture of Sophia on the outside of the trunk in an effort to spread awareness throughout the country. At about the same time, America's Most Wanted highlights Sophia's case. Although 13 valid phone line tips are received as a result of the coverage, none of them result in anything noteworthy. A few months later, in May 2003, police issued a BOLO report for a full-size van from the mid-1990s that was painted a faded orange color and had a license plate with the letter "J" typed on it. Police have attached a profile for the driver of the van, a 35 to 40-year-old Caucasian man with a thick blonde beard, to the vehicle. These reports originate from an eyewitness who says she saw the suspicious driver in the van at the same location and time that Sophia vanished. Whether the man and his van were ever located is a mystery. In the instance of Sophia Juarez, not much is learned as the months stretch into years. Sophia's mother, Maria Juarez, relocates to California in late 2007 or early 2008. She gives birth to a second kid around the middle of 2008. However, on Saturday, January 10, 2009, a tragic chain of events culminates in Maria's death from medical difficulties. 6 days later, on Friday, January 16th, her ashes are transported through the Kennewick, Washington suburbs using the same path that was used for Sophia's candlelight vigil procession over 6 years prior. A heartfelt homage to the young lady who had never given up on finding her first daughter. Al Weiner, a retired police officer from Richland, Washington, was given new responsibility for the investigation by the Kennewick Police Department in 2015. Leading investigator Weiner will take over in February 2021. The Juarez family launched a website in March 2021 that is devoted to the search for Sophia Juarez. It features public access accounts from the investigative teams working on the case since 2003, along with statements urging those who may have been involved to come forward because they will not be able to evade discovery indefinitely. The most significant development in Sophia's case occurs in April 2021 when a TikTok video goes viral, showing a 22-year-old woman from Culiacan, Mexico, who strikingly resembles the age-progressed pictures of Sophia that were recently made public. The woman in the video says she doesn't know her own narrative and she doesn't like birthdays. The woman goes on to claim that she has heard stories of being abducted as a child and doesn't know where she originated from. She would like to talk to her true family. Over 5 million original views are received by the video as it is shared widely throughout social media platforms by both TikTok members and spectators. In order to assist them in finding Sophia, investigators working on her case are informed of and establish a connection with the interviewer in the Ospla video. Regretfully, in March 2022, those identical investigators issued a statement stating that they had compared the 22-year-old woman's DNA to preserved Sophia Ware's DNA and discovered that the two did not match. Even though Sophia's story has gained a lot of attention in the months after the spring of 2021, as of the spring of 2022, police are still requesting any and all information pertinent to the inquiry because it is still a very cold case. Physical evidence was found in relatively small amounts over the first 18 years or so of the search for Sophia Juarez. Volunteers conducted thorough searches for the missing child for several months, but were able to locate a pair of children's overalls and a stray pair of shoes that looked to belong to a young girl. Although they were given to Maria Juarez, the two articles of clothing were never acknowledged as being worn by Sophia. A farmer discovered pieces of a human skull in the Ritzville, Washington, area in August 2006. The skull fragments were subjected to radiocarbon dating testing in 2007. The skull was discovered to be around 600 years old, making Sophia Juarez's age impossible to match. As the years passed, the leads from these red herrings dwindled and the case went nowhere. That is, until an impromptu interview conducted on the TikTok social media app in April 2021 almost completely turned the case around. In a recent video, Ospala, a popular TikTok celebrity who conducts interviews with individuals in various parts of Mexico and the US, is shown interviewing a young woman in Mexico. If the woman is still living today, she will be the same age as Sophia Juarez, who is believed to be around 22 years old. She is presently receiving treatment for either an addiction or another ailment when she is interviewed at a rehabilitation facility. The interviewer brings up the subject of birthdays in the video, and the woman replies that she dislikes them because of a tragic experience that happened to her when she was a young girl, though we do not have a word-for-word translation. In response to the interviewer's question on why, the woman says that she has no idea where she is from and that she may have been kidnapped or taken as a little child in Mexico or perhaps the United States. The woman concludes by stating that she would like to talk to her relatives in order to understand her background and the specific events of her childhood. Following the video's release, a few TikTok users commented on the post, mentioning Sophia Juarez and pointing out how strikingly similar the woman in the video was to the age-progressed posters created for her. After noticing the discussion regarding Sophia Juarez in the comments, the interviewer uploaded a few more follow-up videos, deviating from the typical material of that TikTok account. He stated that he has informed the relevant investigators of everything he knows and requested additional information from the general public. The woman in the video is being sought out and contacted by the content creators behind the accounts, according to a public statement released by Kennewick Police Department investigators in April. The KPD released a fresh statement in June 2021, stating that they had located the woman in question but that she was still receiving care in a rehab facility and that they would update the public as soon as they got more information. The woman allegedly stayed in rehabilitation during that summer and into the following year, until the KPD released the most recent update on Sophia's case in March 2022. The update stated that the woman was cleared from the investigation after it was determined through interviews and DNA testing that she was not Sophia. Even though the TikTok scenario ultimately resulted in a dead end, it serves as a symbol of the need of raising awareness of cold cases and encouraging conversation about them, regardless of how long they have been unsolved or unlikely they are to be. It might have also resulted in the most significant eyewitness account, provided to KPD in May 2021, of a young Hispanic boy escorting a girl who fit Sophia's description to a panel van in the vicinity of around 8:30 p.m. on February 4, 2003. Although the police haven't stated it outright, it's possible that the TikTok video's increased visibility linked this witness to the inquiry. No matter how unlikely it appears, someone could be anywhere in the globe and have the one essential piece of information needed to return a missing person to their family, or at the very least forward a search to the next suitable stage. Because of this, we think that eventually, even though Sophia wasn't discovered through this interview, it will be considered the catalyst for the case's final resolution. Early conjecture on child abduction ideas, particularly those involving large families, frequently focuses on the relatives who were last seen with the victim. Investigators prioritized looking into both Jose and Maria in the Sophia Juarez case. These two adults were the final confirmed sightings of Sophia alive. Fortunately, the mother of Sophia and the grandmother's boyfriend were both able to provide quite credible alibis to the police. Witness evidence had allowed Jose to be tracked down at the grocery shop, and Sophia had never been with him. Although the individual on the other end of the call was identified and had nothing to do with the current issue, some had initially questioned whether his call made from the payphone at the grocery shop would have been connected to a potential contracted abduction. Other Juarez family members corroborated Maria's story, and she was promptly eliminated as a person of interest. When Sophia left the house on 15th East Avenue, her biological father Andre was still believed to be living in Mexico, so he wasn't purged of all family members nearly as soon. In order to locate and speak with Andre, the Kennewick Police Department collaborated with FBI agents and special agents stationed in Mexico. Andre said he had nothing to do with his daughter's disappearance, while being surprised to learn about it. After investigating the leads he gave them about an alibi, the FBI quickly established Andre's innocence. After all family member rumors were thoroughly dispelled, law enforcement's focus shifted to the entirety of Kennewick, Washington, and the surrounding Tri-Cities area. Kennewick initially gives the impression of being a little idyllic town that embodies everything that America is proud to be. Blue-collar, hardworking, and a place where everyone can unite to pursue their dreams and improve their own lot in life. Sadly, not everything in Kennewick, Washington, is sunshine and rainbows. Instead, beneath the benign surface of the southeast Washington suburban area is a history rife with peril and tragedy. Kennewick is located in an area that was formerly home to several Native American tribes, including the Wanapum and Yakama peoples. This area was once lush and bustling. Naturally, this peaceful group of Aboriginal people was driven out of the area by settlers in the 18th century, just like every other indigenous population in North America. Furthermore, by the time Lewis and Clark's expedition passed through Kennewick in 1806, two sizable colonization settlements had already asserted their ownership of the region. More sprang up around what is now Kennewick when the Walla Walla Council formally ceded the area to the United States in 1855. Following this, the number of people who traveled the trails to settle in the Pacific Northwest increased dramatically. The Industrial Revolution also brought about a sharp increase in population in Kennewick and the nearby cities in Washington State and Oregon. As previously reported, Kennewick was a thriving community that was selected for the potential Hanford nuclear site in the 1940s. During World War II, one of the main atomic bombs launched on Japan was developed there using plutonium, and a plethora of job prospects accompanied the new. Americans of all stripes soon flocked to Kennewick to take advantage of the city's abundance of jobs and allure as a suburban area. It seemed to be the ideal refuge for both single people and families. That is, for people with white skin and their families. Kennewick used unsettling patterns of racial discrimination against members of any minority, but especially African Americans, under the false pretense of perfection. In fact, Kennewick had a reputation as a sleepy town before, during, and immediately following the American Civil Rights Movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Sunset towns, sometimes referred to as gray towns or sunset towns, are primarily white cities and communities in the United States that are known to practice and uphold racial segregation, denying non-whites access to local privileges and enforcing this discriminatory behavior through the use of both violent and coercive techniques. One such sundown town that was well known for requiring African Americans to leave the city limits by the end of dusk was Kennewick. Black people were met with harassment on the town streets even during the day by both plainclothes civilians and the police. Both black men and women were prohibited from owning land, which forced them to live in East Pasco, another neighborhood in the Tri-Cities, along with other non-white citizens. Kennewick gradually moved away from its terrible reputation as a sundown town, and because to numerous laws enacted by the federal government, minorities, including African Americans, were granted fair and equal treatment in the community, at least to some extent. But this does not imply that the opinions of people who had lived in Kennewick their entire lives changed for the better only because the laws had changed. The town's reputation has evolved in the new millennium, and it now treats all of its residents with more inclusivity and empathy, but the past cannot be disregarded. Families that were raised with bigotry and racial principles may continue to hold these ideas into the next generation. Furthermore, Sophia Juarez could become a victim of a hate crime or other racial incident. Due to their Mexican origin and Hispanic ethnicity, the Juarez family may have been viewed as undesirable outsiders because they did not have deep roots in Kennewick. Given the negative perceptions of Mexican Americans held by some in America as a result of immigration issues, it is plausible that Sophia and her family were the target of one or more individuals due to their skin tone or ethnic heritage. An important refutation of this idea makes use of eyewitness testimony from May 2021, in which the witness reported seeing a young Hispanic kid escorting a girl who resembled Sophia into a van in February 2003. Given that Sophia's ethnic identification was shared by the most likely suspects to this day, how could it be a hate crime? Nevertheless, a person's identification does not completely preclude them from being a victim of a crime based on their race or ethnicity. The Hispanic lad, who might have been a victim of child abduction himself, might have been coerced into securing small children as part of a kidnapping plot. This is a common method used in human trafficking operations to hide the operators' identities. That being said, because of the randomness of the events, Sophia's kidnapping might not have qualified as a hate crime. Even if her kidnapping was prearranged, no one could have predicted her simple disappearance and public exposure to expose the biases of those engaged. Hate crimes are frequently planned ahead of time and made public to expose the prejudices of the perpetrators. Additionally, there was no pattern of missing children from minority groups in Kennewick about 2003. The Juarez family was not the only minority living in the Tri-Cities, as evidenced by the fact that 24.2% of Kennewick's population is Hispanic or Latino as of 2010. No other families have reported kidnappings comparable to this one, either before or since. Of course, a certain amount of hate crimes still occur in communities with higher minority population percentages. This is not to argue that it is impossible due to the numbers alone. First-generation Americans and immigrants are more likely to be the subject of public animosity. Therefore, patterns alone cannot be the decisive factor. Apart from broad conjecture about kidnapping, there aren't many strong indications pointing to any particular outcome for Sophia Juarez. The KPD has received reports mentioning the theory that Sophia was hit by a driver and fled the scene out of fear. The tips include the names and vehicle descriptions of potential witnesses. Investigators have, however, investigated all of these without finding any evidence to support them. One thing is certain. Everyone believes that whoever abducted Sophia or was directly responsible for her disappearance originated in Kennewick. Most likely, it was a crime of opportunity committed by a familiar street person who Sophia would have recognized. Maria Juarez insisted on telling the police and other outlets that she knew the person who had taken Sophia. She went on to note that although her daughter was an animated and vivacious youngster at home, she was extremely shy and reserved in public, particularly when other people were around. She also mentioned that her daughter had never willingly left the house on her own. Was Sophia acquainted with the small child with the newborn's face who guided the girl to the panel van? She might have known the youngster, but not the driver of the van. Perhaps the van driver had been observing Sophia for some time and decided to take advantage of the ideal opportunity. In any case, everyone is aware that Sophia was abducted against her will. It still remains to be seen who did it. Because Sophia Juarez was a toddler when she vanished, and there is only one possible conclusion, her story differs from most other missing person cases we bring attention to. She was taken hostage and did not flee on her own initiative. Nevertheless, this does not imply that Sophia has passed away. There are individuals out there that have self-preserving secrets from an unknown past that they are working to solve, much like the TikTok phenomenon demonstrated. Regarding the actual kidnapping, we are convinced that the witness who came forward in May 2022 saw the perpetrators. Our suspicion is that the boy who escorted Sophia away while she sobbed wasn't acting alone. Rather, he was a puppet for an older suspect who used the boy to entice other kids into danger. We also think Sophia might have recognized the boy, or at least been relieved to see someone who resembled a kid. We can't be positive, but it's possible that the boy was trying to defuse the situation rather than laughing since he understood what would happen to Sophia. Either way, the boy's and whoever's behavior in the panel van behind him are unacceptable and ought to be held accountable. Sophia might still be alive, and the youngster and whoever he was working with hold the key to providing the most important response. Recall that the youngster seen interacting with Sophia on South Washington Street in Kennewick, Washington, was assessed by the witness to be between 11 and 14 years old, translating to 29 to 32 years old now. The youngster was described as being between 5 and 6 feet 2 inches tall, with a light complexion and Hispanic ancestry. He was overweight, and the baby fat that was still visible around his face gave him a plumper look that could be mistaken for a baby's face. There was a faint trace on his cheek that might have been a birthmark or a bruise. The boy's hair was about 1.5 inches long, dark, and curly. The bangs were pushed flat with what looked like grease or hair gel. The youngster was most notable for having hands that were larger than normal for a boy his age. We don't currently know the specifics of the attire. The full-sized panel van was reported as having no side windows and being either a 19-70S or 19-80s model with light blue, silver, or gray paint. Keeping these descriptions in mind, please call the KPD at 509-582-1331 or email the special investigator at alwaner@sidickennewicht.wa.us if you have any information that could link these things to the overall investigation. By phone, Crime Stoppers USA can be reached at 1-800-222-TIPS. Ultimately, our goal is to return an innocent mind to her family in the world that she was snatched from much too soon. The idea that Sophia's mother, Maria, didn't have enough time to find out what had happened to her daughter, and that, like the other Juarez family members who are still alive, Sophia's half-sister would have done anything to ensure that her daughter returned home safely is devastating. Despite her brief existence, Sophia had a lasting impact on those who knew her. There was something extraordinary about the way her grin and her energy filled the 100 block of East 15th Avenue residence. Sophia was there to lift you out of the shadows and into the sunshine of love and laughter, no matter how awful your day had been. Had Sophia lived, she would have had a profound effect on the world, an impact that, due to a terrible tragedy lurking in the shadows of the once sunset-turned-sleepy blue-collar town, we might never know. Sophia was a happy little girl who enjoyed brightly colored crafts, cheeseburgers, and cartoons. That way, instead of remembering her as someone who disappeared, we will remember her as a real person who might still be alive. Their tale is far from ended. Moving on to the next case. Somerton Man. Some believe he was searching for a past love. Some people believe he was a smuggler. He was allegedly a Cold War spy. 60 years later, a professor of electronic engineering fell in love with a girl as well as this enigma. A girl who was the key to what used to appear to be an intractable enigma. Finally, after 70 years, we solve the puzzle. This is the Somerton Man's tale. A couple is taking a leisurely stroll along Somerton Park Beach, which is located just outside of Adelaide, South Australia, on November 30th, 1948, at approximately 7:15 p.m. As the waves gently lap against the barrier, they notice a man dressed sharply in a brown suit leaning against it. He appears to be sleeping. Even when he waves half-heartedly at them, the pair only laughs, assuming he's had too much to drink. The same man is lying there on the sand, still as a statue, and is noticed by two jockeys who are exercising their horses on the beach the following morning. That is odd right now, correct? One of the jockeys, Neil Day, then approaches to have a better look. He tries to nuzzle the man, but nothing happens. And there was the start of the Somerton Man's mystery. That was December 19th, 1948, right there on the bright shores of Adelaide. The body was sent to the Royal Adelaide Hospital for examination by the responding authorities. The attending physician guessed that the man had probably died about 2 in the morning. He seemed like your typical Joe at first glance, a 511 man in his mid-40s with gray eyes and reddish-brown hair. He had a clean-shaven face, neat fingernails, soft hands, and a polished appearance. But one of the medical examiners noticed a few anomalies when they looked more closely. First of all, the man's calf muscles were remarkably prominent. Another oddity was that he was missing an astounding 16 teeth. They searched the man's pockets in the hopes of finding some information about who he was, but they found nothing. No ID, no wallet. The only items they discovered were 2 combs, a pack of chewing gum, a carton of cigarettes and matches, and a few airline tickets. A counterfoil from an unused bus ticket from Adelaide to the adjacent town of Henley Beach, and another from Adelaide to Somerton. However, what really complicated the mystery was the man's attire. Back ago, it was typical for people to put their names or initials on the labels of their clothing so that they could be washed later. However, every label on the man's outfit had been carefully cut off. They even took off the name badges from the undervest. And there was even another oddity. A rip in his pants pocket had been expertly repaired with vivid orange embroidery floss. Unsettling results from the autopsy included an enlarged spleen and damage to the liver. Despite the pathologist's suspicions of heart failure, the man's heart strangely seemed to be functioning normally. Test results for toxicology were negative. There was no poison in his system, not a hint of violence either. There were no scratches on his body or alterations to the sand surrounding him. The coroner became perplexed. The Somerton man's death was not natural, whatever caused it to happen. There was definitely no accident. The Somerton man's identity had to be investigated before the authorities could even start to piece together who might have been responsible for his death. His picture appeared in Australian newspapers with a silent call for someone to come forward and identify themselves as his family. The mystery drew large audiences who rushed to the mortuary in hopes of seeing his face. People kept coming out of the shadows, claiming to know the Somerton man, but every lead ended in oblivion. Then something unexpected happened. A publication boldly claimed that E.C. Johnson was the man discovered on Somerton Beach. However, E.C. Johnson personally corrected the record when he walked into the police station. The Somerton man provided his fingerprints, but regrettably none of them matched. The cops, unfazed, distributed his picture widely. Numerous phone calls arrived, all claiming to know the enigmatic individual. He was a husband gone from the family, a guardian away from illegal card games, a recognizable face from the military testing base up north. A local newspaper even made the joke that the police provided an almost round-the-clock taxi service to transport individuals who were anxious to see the mysterious figure to and from the mortuary. However, hopes gradually faded as they increased. Those who were positive they knew him were convinced otherwise when they saw him in person, and thus he stayed the Somerton man, an enigma that seemed to grow bigger every day. Investigators would struggle to piece together his identity and the circumstances of his death for years, if not decades. There was conjecture. He was a former dancer, a Cold War spy, and the casualty of a bad love. It turned into one of the most intriguing and long-lasting cold cases in Australia, a story that would enthrall future generations. A month or so after discovering his dead, detectives turned their attention to the scant belongings of the Somerton man. He did, after all, have those travel tickets and a few trinkets, but no real luggage. In order to find lost bags, the police spread out their net and posted notices at motels and train stations. They searched all possible places a bag may end up abandoned, including dry cleaners, bus stops, and lost property offices. Then, as if by magic, 3 days after the call was made, on January 14, 1949, they struck gold. They noticed a dark brown bag that had been abandoned at the Adelaide train station. The luggage tag indicated that it had been checked in on November 30th, the day the Somerton man was found on the beach, at approximately 11 a.m. When detectives pried it open, they discovered an odd assortment of objects, including handkerchiefs, scissors, a knife, and shaving supplies. However, it was a simple spool of thread that caused their thoughts to race. An unidentified brand that is unavailable in Australia, in the exact same shade of orange as the thread that was used to repair the Somerton man's pocket. Just a coincidence? Not likely. Hold on, there's more. There was a stencil brush among the miscellaneous items. A third officer in the Navy would normally use this kind of instrument. Strangely enough, though, they also found drafting pencils, the kind used by engineers, next to this nautical clue. And then there were the garments, shirts, trousers, a coat, and more, all in the Somerton man's exact size and style, with the exception of 3 that had had their labels painstakingly taken off. One tie among them has a fading ink name scribbled on the label. It appeared to be Keen. At last, a ray of optimism. The Somerton man might have had a name, and the police had a possible lead. Many English-speaking countries, including the U.S., where the man's code originated, had their records searched through. But, despite their best attempts, they were unable to locate any information about a missing person with that name. Investigators appeared to be stumbling over thin air, trying to figure out who this man was, as it seemed he was desperate to remain anonymous. But it was time for the Somerton man to rest. More than 6 months had gone since his passing, but not before detectives saved his face, the only concrete indication they had. They paid their final respects to a guy whose identity remained a mystery by having him embalmed and creating a plaster cast of his head and shoulders. The Somerton man was buried in an Adelaide cemetery on June 14, 1949. His identity was hidden under a concrete vault and remained a mystery. "Here lies the unknown man who was found at Somerton Beach," was the plain statement engraved on the tombstone. Authorities were no closer to solving the mystery that surrounded him despite the burial. By April of 1949, the police had reached a dead end. It had been over 5 months since the body was found, and they were still no closer to solving the mystery. They resorted to University of Adelaide pathology expert Professor John Cleland, frustrated and in need of a breakthrough, to re-examine the facts. The way that Professor Cleland went about things was just brilliant. He came up with a cunning plan after realizing how difficult it would be to tell whether the garments in the bag would fit the Somerton man's lifeless figure. He got someone who was around the same size as the Somerton man to try on the clothes from the bag, and the ones the man was found wearing. They fit like a glove miraculously, proving beyond a doubt that the suitcase really belonged to him. That wasn't all, though. Professor Cleland discovered a secret pocket in the Somerton man's trousers when examining his clothing. There was a rolled-up piece of paper with 2 big Persian words printed on it. The professor did not find these words very memorable. This was a really confusing statement, and no one at the station knew what it meant. Then a well-read newspaper reporter clarified that it was inspired by a work written by the well-known poet Omar Khayyam from the 12th century. They were specifically taken from his book Rubaiyat. Tamamshud is a word that signifies end. With this new information, investigators surmised that the Somerton man may have left this cryptic clue to indicate that he committed suicide or to reflect on the greater meanings of life in his final moments. It's interesting to note that the Rubaiyat was highly valued at the time. The first edition of the Rubaiyat was rebound in 1909 by 2 expert English bookbinders who embellished it with more than 1,000 precious and semi-precious stones, such as ivory, silver, and gold leaf. This magnificent extension cost an American buyer about $70,000 in today's currency. Regretfully, the book in question perished on the Titanic while traveling to America and hasn't been found again. However, the investigators weren't after that particular book. The book from which the scroll was torn was what they desired. They made contact with all the libraries in the Adelaide region, asking the staff for assistance in going through their copies of the Rubaiyat to check for any missing pages. Until a fortunate break came along. It seemed impossible to locate the particular book if the scrap was from a unique printing. About the time the Somerton man met his end, on July 24, 1949, a chemist entered the Adelaide police station with a copy of the Rubaiyat he had found in his car months before. After reading the enigmatic scrap in the newspapers, he stopped discounting it and started to be curious. He turned to the last page and showed the words Tamamshud that were missing. The piece from the Somerton man's pocket and the tear in the book matched exactly, giving officials the much-needed breakthrough. Examining the book more closely revealed another interesting lead. A phone number on the back cover that was written in pencil. The number belonged to a young nurse who lived not far from Somerton Beach, a mere stroll away from the scene of the man's discovery. And so Jessica Thompson started to draw attention. Jessica's response to the police's questioning was just as enigmatic as the case itself. She said she had nothing to do with the Somerton man. There were virtually no leads left, and the investigators were at a loss. Then they made the decision to invite her in to have a closer look at the Somerton man's cast. The sight of the plaster cast of the Somerton man's face appeared to shake her visibly. She shifted back and forth between astonished silence and evasive answers. The chief inspector saw that she was about to pass out and reached out to support her, but then realized she was able to stand by herself. However, the investigators' will to uncover the layers of mystery surrounding her was only strengthened by her evasiveness. Investigators were greatly burdened by the riddle of Jessica Thompson's phone number in the Somerton man's Rubaiyat. When pressed for clarification, Jessica at last opened up. She met Alfred Boxall, an Australian Army officer, when she was employed at a Sydney hospital during World War II. She admitted to giving him a copy of the Rubaiyat, but she remained evasive about their romantic relationship. When the police discovered that Boxall was still alive, and still in possession of the ruby Aunt Jessica had given him, they mistakenly believed they had made progress. However, this book was not the Somerton man's edition. It had a handwritten poem and Jessica's signature on it. Going back to the enigmatic pencil notation, the investigators found more information than just phone digits. Beneath them was a string of barely readable characters. When exposed to ultraviolet light, the message was more visible. 5 rows of capital letters, some crossed out, arranged as though at random. They realized it. It was a code. Australia's naval intelligence, famous for interpreting messages during warfare, received the rubaiyat. Police also published the cryptic letter in newspapers in an attempt to reach out to the public in the hopes of making progress. Even the naval intelligence professionals, however, were unable to decipher the code. Everyone was confused by the code, which led to hypotheses ranging from a ship's name to a depressing message. Even with concerted efforts, a definitive explanation remained elusive. 5 years later, in 1958, police formally concluded their inquiry into the death of the Somerton man. However, conspiracy rumors persisted due to the attraction of an unexplained death and an enigmatic code. The Somerton case, like many unsolved mysteries, captivated the minds of those who ventured to ponder its secrets with a trail of unanswered questions and infinite speculation. Australia became heavily involved in espionage during the 1940s, having been a vital component of the British Commonwealth and the Allied troops in World War II. Intelligence services were instrumental in bringing the war to a close by intercepting communications from adversarial countries. The post-war world became more divided along ideological lines between capitalism and communism, which fueled a race for military technological dominance. There were hints in the case file about the Somerton man that suggested he was not your typical citizen. He carefully hid his identity, leaving all the clothes in the luggage and on him unlabeled. There were very few products using the name Keane, which was eventually unsuccessful. His nationality was still a mystery. His coat's origin led some to surmise that he was British, although his facial characteristics and hairdo suggested otherwise. However, the fact that his coat was made in America did not automatically label him as a spy. Before his unexplained death, it's possible that the Somerton man had traveled to the United States on vacation or family business. However, that was not the sole indicator suggesting an alien persona. Not to mention the strange orange thread, a brand unavailable in Australia, that he used to fix his trousers. This implied a great deal of travel, portraying the Somerton man as a global mystic. And then the query came up. Adelaide is a small city on Australia's southern coast. What was he doing there? The Woomera Air Force Complex, some 300 kilometers to the north, may hold the key. The largest land-based test range in the Western Hemisphere was located at Woomera, a joint Australian-British station. When it was founded in 1947, it spanned an area nearly the size of Pennsylvania, 47,000 square miles of level, arid land. Tests of atomic bombs, missiles, and rockets were among the highly classified military programs carried out by Britain at this station. If this theory is correct, there would have been a lot of espionage activities in South Australia. The Somerton man might have been an Australian spy with too much information. It's possible that he turned Soviet and needed to be silenced. Alternatively, he might have been a Soviet agent who was about to defect but was killed off before he could do so. This returns us to the enigmatic circumstances surrounding his demise. Medical professionals conducting the inquiry discovered no poison in the man's system, at least not that could be determined using standard methods. One theory was that he swallowed something, or received something that disintegrated right away and left no trace. Although there were no visible indications of puncture wounds, another explanation proposed injection. His liver's state did not lend credence to this theory. Sir Cedric Stanton Hicks, an Adelaide University physiology and pharmacology professor, was approached by the coroner in search of explanations. Hicks wrote down on a sheet of paper for the coroner the names of those who might have been poisoned. Among them was strophenthine, a strong chemical that certain West African tribes had traditionally employed to make poison arrows. It was deadly and imperceptible to traditional chemical tests, even at low dosages. Kate, the daughter of Jessica Thompson, revealed in 2013 that her mother was fluent in Russian, a fact Jessica had never before divulged to anyone. Jessica also admitted to Kate that she had lied to the police about who the Somerton man was. Jessica alluded to the fact that the situation went beyond the police's purview, implying higher-level participation. This information raised rumors that Jessica may have been working for the Australian government as a counter-espionage agent. It's possible that she was providing military officials with intelligence, of which the Rubiettes were an essential component. Still, if not even the most skilled codebreakers could crack the code, then who held the secret? In 1995, Derek Abbott read about the Somerton man's story in a magazine article. Though he was intrigued at first, he was unable to delve more into the enigma due to his duties as an Adelaide University electrical engineering professor. Derek didn't become interested in the topic again until he read about the unsolved code that was discovered in the man's possession in 2007. Experts in code breaking spent 6 years delving into the mystery, yet the solution remained elusive. Unfazed, Derek turned his attention to solving another mystery: who Jessica was. The mysterious nurse's real name was removed from official documents to keep her private and her identity a mystery for many years. Jerry Feltus, an Adelaide investigator, helped Derek out by providing the original piece of paper with Jessica's phone number that was in the Somerton man's book. Derek discovered Jessica Thompson, better known as Jo, was Jessica's real identity after conducting a thorough research. Regretfully, Derek was unable to ask Jessica about her relationship with the Somerton man before she passed away. Investigating Jessica's past, Derek learned that she had been romantically engaged with Prosper Thompson, a local, in 1947, a year and a half before the latter man passed away. Together, the two had a son named Robert. Though Jessica insisted that Prosper was Robin's father, questions about who her child's father was, especially since she was so evasive when questioned by the police, raised. This gave Derek the idea for a novel theory. The man from Somerton was Robin's paternal grandfather. After looking into it more, Derek found strong evidence to back up his theory. Like the Somerton man, Robin had unusual physical characteristics, such as unusual ear structures and hypodontia, a hereditary disease. In addition, both had experience with ballet. Robin had even done shows with the Australian Ballet Company. These results pointed to a possible family relationship between the Somerton guy and Robin. The finding that Rachel Egan, Robin's daughter, might be the Somerton man's granddaughter added credence to it. Nothing short of extraordinary was Rachel's investigation into her family's history, which was entwined with one of Australia's biggest mysteries. She discovered mysteries that linked her to the unidentified guy discovered on Somerton Beach as she dug further into her family history. Rachel was dubious at first, but she consented to see Derek Abbott. Their mutual curiosity and perseverance sparked an unanticipated friendship that finally developed into a love tale that transcended even the most enduring enigmas. After getting hitched in 2010, Derek and Rachel are parents to 3 kids. Exhuming the Somerton man's remains in order to obtain DNA was the most logical course of action. Derek asked to have the remains exhumed multiple times, but each time he was told no. But in 2015, Derek discovered an alternative. He found that the 1940s plaster cast still had part of the Somerton man's hair stuck in it. These hairs were delivered by Derek to a University of Adelaide lab. He believed there would be enough DNA to compare it to Rachel's, but the test yielded conflicting results, and the little sample size prevented scientists from sequencing the entire molecule. Derek's optimism was rekindled in 2021, though, when the Australian government eventually dug out the Somerton man. A group carrying large gear pulled up at Adelaide's West Terrace Cemetery on May 18, 2021. The Somerton man had to be pulled from the ground for about 12 hours. Most of his organic matter had degraded from being dead for more than 70 years, and he had also been embalmed. Preservatives are used in place of the body's natural fluids in this situation. The preservation method damaged the DNA, even if it helped to keep the body in good health. There was a chance that not enough viable DNA would remain to collect a sample. Derek and Colleen Fitzpatrick worked together in 2022, painstakingly tracking the genetic traces of the Somerton man. The hair on the plaster cast. One name stuck out when they put together his family tree. The name on the mystery clothing matched that of a man who suited the description of the Somerton man, and who had a brother-in-law named Thomas Keene. Derek and Colleen tracked down the Somerton man's relatives and nephews. On July 22, 2022, scientists discovered two matches using DNA samples they had collected from their living descendants. Christy Webb is Somerton man's granddaughter, and Stuart Webb is his great-great-nephew. The investigative community was rocked by the revelation. It inspired fresh optimism that the Somerton man's identity was about to be revealed. Carl Charles Webb was an Australian electrical engineer born in Melbourne in November of 1905. It became clear as Webb's life narrative came to light that it was anything but typical. He had 6 siblings and was raised in a big household. According to articles in the newspaper at the time, he played community football. This could explain his general physique and well-developed calves. Charles had suffered significant losses in his life before to his passing. Along with his brother Roy, with whom he was close, his mother and father also departed from this life. Charles also experienced a divorce with Dorothy Robertson, the woman he wed in the vicinity of 1941. Dorothy's later divorce decree described their tumultuous marriage. Charles loved to write poetry, with the theme of death appearing frequently. Dorothy once discovered him in bed covered in ether. She spared his life even though he took 50 sleeping tablets. Charles's story reveals a tale of domestic tragedy rather than spy intrigue, despite rampant speculation to the contrary. Webb disappeared without a trace in April 1947, leaving a broken family and a trail of mystery in his wake. The South Australia Police Department carried out additional tests to confirm Webb's identity, even though DNA evidence clearly suggested that he was who he claimed to be. The absence of formal confirmation, however, allowed for conjecture and maintained the door open to the conspiracy theories that had long surrounded the case. In his own journey, Derek Abbott achieved closure despite the unanswered questions. Any relationship between his wife, Rachel, and the Somerton guy was ruled out by DNA testing. His years-long personal burden was lightened by this. The Webb family experienced a range of feelings in response to the discovery, including relief, closure, and a sense of regaining a lost chapter in their past. Charles Webb's great-great-nephew and granddaughter, Christy Webb, and Stuart dug through old family photos. They rediscovered long-forgotten pictures of Charles. The entire Webb family was present at a large family get-together back then. Essentially, this picture was taken 20 years before he passed away. Charles Webb changed during their trip from being a strange man in the news to a beloved family member. His life narrative served as a monument to the continuing strength of family ties and resonated far beyond the parameters of a cold case. The Somerton man case has been resolved to a great extent. His name is now known, but regrettably, a lot of answers perished with him. We may never learn the circumstances behind his death. Moving on to the next case. Steven Welk. On June 13, 1952, Steven Welk was born in St. Louis, Missouri. He spent his entire life there. Steven, being 40 years old, was employed at Ajax Liquor on April 23, 1993. The booze store on Jeffco Boulevard in Arnold belonged to him. A guy and a lady went to the store that morning to make some purchases. They contacted the police after discovering Steven Welk's body face down. His own gun, used in an execution-style manner, took his life. Since nothing was taken from the store, burglary didn't seem to be the reason. After questioning Steven's friends and family, investigators were unable to gather any pertinent information. Additionally, no witnesses reported seeing anything unusual. Sadly, the case remained unsolved for a very long time because there were no leads, despite the detectives' best efforts. Then, in 2015, a woman came forward with the allegation that Steven's life was taken by her husband, Laurel Harp. That year, Laurel's associate also came forward to inform the authorities that Laurel Harp was, in fact, the culprit. They have sufficient proof to establish that Steven Welk was murdered by Laurel Harp. To arrest him, they traveled to the Riverview Care Center assisted living facility in St. Louis. Laurel admitted right away, but he said that when the gun went off, the two of them were fighting. That is untrue, though, as investigators found that Steven was kneeling when he was shot. Investigators were also informed by Laurel that he intended to rough up Steven when he got to the booze store. Laurel was frequently hired by others to enforce or collect. He frequently used violence to get people to pay him money they owed. Laurel has completed her prison sentence for stealing, burglary, and illegal use of a weapon. He would be sentenced to life in jail without the chance of probation or parole if found guilty now. Sadly, Steven's mother died earlier this year without discovering the identity of the person who killed her son at Faithful Day 27 years ago. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with us. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries. Your support helps us bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like us to cover next. See you in the next video, and remember, the search for truth never stops.